You've been up since dark 30 and sunrise was a while ago. You've gone 200 miles already and earned a stop to stretch your legs and fuel up. Welcome to 200 Miles Before Breakfast, a podcast by, for, and about the members of the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Welcome to episode 56, released on the 1st of December, 2022. Our guest is David Cwi, member since 1983. As an MOA member, you are eligible to get up to 35% off the purchase of original BMW parts from a participating dealer in the United States. Purchase your parts in-store from a participating dealer before the end of December 2022, and you can get 25% off purchases of at least $150, 30% off purchases of $250 or more, and 35% off purchases of $500 or more. This is a huge thing if you're doing like a clutch job or working on your ABS system or something like that. It's a big deal. Now, there are restrictions. First and foremost, BMW Motorrad dealers in the U.S. are not required to participate, though honestly, knowing how these programs work on their end, I don't know why they wouldn't. I've heard from some members that their local dealers aren't honoring the discounts, but I know that some are, so you may have to shop around. Second, the discounts apply only to original parts, original classic parts, original service parts, and replacement OEM parts purchased from an authorized BMW Motorrad dealership. And like I said, only in the United States. Sorry, everybody else. Nothing else qualifies for the discount, no accessories or gear or anything like that. Now, you must be a member of the MOA to take advantage of this discount. Just show them your membership card when you check out. If you don't have your card, you can print the profile screen from your account at bmwmoa.org, which shows that you're an active member and gives your membership number. If you're not a member yet, you can join now for just $49 a year and get the discount as soon as we process your membership. Find out more about this and all the discounts and benefits available to all MOA members by visiting bmwmoa.org. The holidays are approaching, and I'm sure we're all thinking about gifts for the children in our lives. Our friends Nancy and Mark, the creators of Mimi and Moto, want you to join their mission to get more children excited about motorcycles. Go visit www.mimiandmoto.com, where you can purchase the couple's motorcycle books for kids. They're called The Adventures of Mimi and Moto and Mimi and Moto Ride the Alphabet. You can also pick up other things like t-shirts, onesies, ornaments, and even plushies featuring the lovable Mimi and Moto. And stay tuned as Nancy and Mark are working on a new chapter book called Mimi and Moto's Magical Meteors, First Gear, which they plan to release early in 2023. Head over to mimiandmoto.com today and get some Christmas shopping done, not just to help your kid with reading, but to help create future motorcycle riders. That's MIMI and moto.com. Happy holidays. Joining me on this episode of 200 Miles Before Breakfast is David Cwi, who has been an MOA member, if the records are to be trusted, since 1983. Dave, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to see you. 1983. How many years is that?
That's almost 40.
Holy Hannah. Are there any MOA members from my era still smoking a whatever, if you catch my drift? But really?
Yeah.
Almost 40 years.
Almost crap. 40 years.
Excuse me.
So obviously, you've been a BMW motorcycle fan for quite some time, but I'm curious if you came into motorcycling via BMWs or if you discovered those somewhere along the way.
No, my first motorcycle was my roommate's sister's Honda Dream, which was a 150 little baby scooter. I blew up a car going from Iowa to Baltimore to go to graduate school. And I, had a roommate there in graduate school and had a sister, and I needed transport. So I ended up on this baby dream Honda. That led me to a Kawasaki dealer and whose son raced bikes, and I would get his race bikes, which were put back on the street. So I was a two-stroke guy, starting with 250 and 350 speed-tuned Kawasaki's.
Wow.
And we would look for Harley-Davidson Sportsters, and of course they hated rice burners, and we would go to stoplight to stoplight with them. That turned into a Kawasaki Mach 3, the most deadly motorcycle ever made.
Yeah.
And from that, but that dealer then took on BMWs. And all of a sudden I found myself having to, I walked in with a /2. Somehow I got an R69S. And I walked that into him for repair. And that morphed into a relationship, an ongoing relationship with the BMW brand, which led me to the MOA in a very classic manner. I'm sitting there on a corner in my neighborhood, and I see 3 BMWs parked in front of a sandwich shop. Hey, guys, what's up? Blah, 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 woof, woof, woof. Rally, local club rally. Are you coming? Really? What's that?
I guess I am now.
I guess I am now. So all of a sudden, I'm buying a pup tent at an Army surplus store. And that was my introduction both to the camaraderie of BMW motorcycles, because back in the day, you were very much your own mechanic, and you were very much all about learning from somebody else. And you were very much about, that's how you do that. I can take that spark plug off a Ford and put it in my bike, and that air cleaner will work. Oh, really? So it was very much a network of people who were partying together at a local club event. And so it began. And here I am today talking to you.
So you mentioned an R69. I imagine you've had some other BMWs in the past, but what do you ride currently? What do you have around at your disposal?
I've always had only one BMW motorcycle. And the current one, after I had my beat down in the Dakotas this summer, I had to replace that bike with one that I could still bolt other stuff back onto, and stumbled on a 2013 HP2 motored RT. You may hear a phone ringing in the background. Unfortunately, I have no way of stopping it. So it's going to continue, and then it will stop, and then it will take a message, and then you will edit this so that it is gone away. But
the ongoing joke is where I tell you, don't worry about it, I'll edit that out. And we're
going to have to pause there for a minute or two, because it's going to continue until there it goes. It's now stopped.
Gotcha.
This is and of course I farkle them up in my own unique way.
Right.
But this is a 2013 HP2 motor, the best motor they ever made, except for the current motor. All black, which is my favorite color. And, and ready to set up in the way I like them set up, which is part of what we're going to be talking about actually here in a minute.
Yeah. So I know that you have done a lot of what a lot of people would consider hard riding, long miles, long days. So
you have no idea. Let me put that in context for you. All I did for years was spend the weekend at a local motorcycle event in a tent drinking adult beverages.
Right.
Which means I had to go from Baltimore to Iowa to go to the Iowa rally. I every year without fail went to Bike Week. It would be 2 days down, 1 day back. 2 days down because you wanted to get there in the middle of the afternoon so you could be set up for the party.
Exactly.
And then you had a lot of ginseng, a lot of B12, and a lot of coffee. You got up out of your tent. You had to get home in 1 day. Well, I'm not sure how many 1,000-mile days I've had, because I might have done easily 10 to 15 a year. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. And that prompted me to end up getting a Randolph tank, which means you had to get Ray Randolph was making tanks for K-bikes. And all of a sudden I've got eight gallons in my lap. Then all of a sudden there's a fuel cell behind me. So doing doing 1,000-mile days was easy. I have to be honest with you. I don't think it's very hard to do one. I say this because they're not very special to me, which makes me scratch my head about why everybody thinks they're special. They're just not.
Yeah.
But all you do is sit there. They're not hard. if you're not hungover, if you're hungover, they're very hard.
Yeah.
Well, according to my old dealer back in the East Coast, I've got 1 million miles at least on BMW motorcycles, which I've never applied for, but I might get around with this year.
Yeah, and I
got a lot of hard miles, including a lot of 30 or 40 Iron Butt Association endurance rides.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember the old days, which depending on how old somebody who's listening is, can be 10 years ago or 50. But I used to find 1,000, 1,200 miles was it was a matter of endurance. You could do it if you put in the time, but it always seemed to be fairly. For me, it was kind of exhausting until the first time I did 1,000 miles in a day with a bike that had cruise control. And it kind of changed my perspective on the whole idea of riding literally halfway across the country in one day.
Well, we'll have to someday talk about the hardest thing I ever did which was to go from Halifax to Vancouver.
Oh.
In other words, a 50cc, there's some
the hard way
just worth doing to say that you did something special. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Border to border, those kinds of rides. But if you're not doing a ride to party, or if you're not doing a ride that's fun, why do it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I was always riding to a party.
Yeah.
I had to get home, unfortunately. But the notion of let's just go do it so that we can pay somebody for a certificate just has me scratching my head. But that's a story for another time. Let us proceed. Yes, to answer your question, I have got a few miles, but increasingly, as the process sets in, and due deference to my wife, who says, "I don't want you putting the fuel cell back on that bike. I don't want you riding I don't want you riding all night anymore."
Yeah.
So, you start to go, you say, yes, you nod your head. I'm not doing that. But you don't bother to tell her that there are 16 lit hours.
Yeah. Well, I think we all work.
Go 1,000 miles in daylight.
We all work the edges of the rules.
Exactly. Listen, I'm looking forward to sharing some practical knowledge, because one of the things that has happened is when you're on a lot of different motorcycles from a lot of different eras, and you've tried just about everything yourself, and in my case had 2 major accidents. People might remember I got hit by a stolen car at a BMW National in Canada.
Goodness.
And was hospitalized from that. I was for 12 weeks not able to do anything if I stayed with doctor's orders after my last beatdown. So I have, as a consequence, osteoarthritis and no cartilage at all in my shoulders. I'm bone on bone.
Oh, that doesn't sound comfortable
at all.
So
I have a bunch of things that I'm mindful of or managing at the same time I'm managing being on a motorcycle doing what you said, hard miles.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give some people some practical advice, some of it very old school. It's lost in that applied to an era and then got put aside, but is still relevant.
Yeah.
Well, again.
And that's what kind of spurred the whole inspiration behind having you on the show is that when we met up at the rally this year in Springfield, you noticed that I was limping because I'm having some problems with an arthritic knee, and you told me a couple things that I could do to help out with that. And I said, well, how do you know this stuff? And you said, well, it's my job. And
part of it is also my training, because I'm a certified trainer with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So I'm always working with people as well who are injured in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I thought it would be.
I have to help them mitigate their problem, but not aggravate it and turn it into a chronic problem.
Right. Yeah.
So I have a mission, as it turns out, that people are paying me for, to help them Got a guy right now. He's got one artificial knee. He's got limited cartilage in the other one. He doesn't want a second knee replacement. What can I do? What can he do? Well, here I am. I have to train him. But let's kind of talk about, if you're ready, let me kind of drop into this whole subject of pain management.
Absolutely, because that's a critical thing. You can only take so much a leave, in a day. And it doesn't really do all the things you need it to do because it's just masking the problem rather than dealing with it.
Well, I'm going to start with picking up on your rather excellent observation. Most pain management involves masking it. You're not really typically eliminating it unless it's eliminatable, by which I mean, let's kind of back up. If you've got if you're getting on the motorcycle with chronic pain of some sort, which you will have if you have arthritis, which you will have if you've got osteoarthritis of the knee, you need to go to your doctor, have him do a scan, tell you what you got, and take whatever advice they care to give you. Because we're not going to in this podcast, we're not going to give you some magic silver little bullet that's going to overcome the problem. What we are going to do is what may be the case is that the motorcycle riding itself is causing a problem, which goes away when you're not on the bike. And I'll go through what that typically is. The most obvious one is my butt hurts.
Right.
That's the one or else there wouldn't be an aftermarket seat population at every national, guys selling you a seat. But it's either making your problem that is already chronic and which you are masking somewhat successfully. It all of a sudden makes it worse. Catch my drift.
Yep.
Or it's unique and it only is happening on the motorcycle. The typical thing that we want to focus on is an old saying and nobody knows where this saying comes from. But if you don't mind, it don't matter. And people think that comes from Mark Twain, and then Satchel Paige, but nobody really knows. And it was also about old age. If old age, what do you think of old age? Well, if you don't mind, it don't matter. The notion here is if you're not paying attention to it, you can live with it. So managing it literally means not paying attention to it. And sometimes when we're on a motorcycle, it's what I call the cleanse run. You're so focused on the ride and you're so excited to be there. It's like you had an adrenaline rush, which then masks your pain.
Yeah.
You're all excited. You're not paying attention. We've managed your pain. Then all of a sudden, after a while during the ride, you notice, oh my God, this hurts, that hurts. And all of a sudden, not only are you noticing it, but it's even worse because you've got all these other irritants happening at the same time. So I'm going to talk about, let's assume your goal is to take a bunch of meds, which are helping you mask your pain. They're consistent with whatever your doctor prescribes. You're taking them at a dose rate that's not going to kill you. So you're not ODing yourself. But all of a sudden, you got all these irritants while you're riding the bike, and your pain tolerance has now sprung a leak because you've got this extra burden. And I'm going to walk you through what typically is happening to a guy on a motorcycle where this is occurring, either only when he's on the bike, or unfortunately while he's on the bike and had successfully thought, I can ride today. I got my pain under control. Now I'm irritated like hell.
Yeah.
Let's start with the helmet. Helmets, the better helmets are quote unquote quiet. And in fact, you can see helmet ratings by how quiet they are inside. And this becomes important because you got a communicator, you've turned up the volume, you'd like to keep it as low as possible so as not to blow out your eardrum or cause hearing loss, but they're quiet. And part of the reason they're quiet is they fit tight. So if you get your Shoei, in particular, one of the 2 or 3 highest rated quiet helmets, those cheek pads are so tight on your face. In my case, I literally, if I were chewing anything, would be biting the inside of my mouth. It's too tight. I said to my dealer, I will only buy this helmet from you if you get the cheek pad for the smaller helmet. The smaller helmets had different cheek pads. They're a minor difference, but it dramatically affects the comfort level of wearing this thing all day. And guys should be mindful of that. You can typically buy a different cheek pad for your helmet. Let's move down the kinetic chain, as we put it. I remember going into a neurosurgeon because I was dropping things. I couldn't hold on to stuff.
Oh,
so he tests the nerves firing from my elbow to my hand and how fast the signal is going down in my hand. And he looks at me and says, "My God, you got carpal tunnel of the elbow." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah. How the hell did you do that?" I said, "Well, at the time I was probably on a /5 with a tank bag with Clubman bars, and I'd lay on the tank bag with my arms stretched out totally in front of me, elbows locked. I'm just laying there, going 1,000 miles." He says, "You don't do that, do you?" I described this. He says, "You can't do that." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, you're going to lose the ability to hold anything in your hand." This radically changed. This got me up from that position into a more RT-like sit-up position. And this becomes real important for guys riding a BMW, which is by design a torture machine. I want you to think about a Harley versus a BMW. A Harley Davidson is based on a Western saddle horse.
Right.
Your feet are in front of you. They're not under you, whereas BMW has modeled this thing on a little prancing European horse. Problem is, your feet are behind you, your knees are way over your foot. Most people, if they're in that position, are stretching tendons. They're asking their leg to be in a position that, from a pure flexibility standpoint, it's not accustomed to. Now you're bouncing up and down, perhaps, trying to do this. Guys, if they've got knee issues on their BMW, need to move their feet forward. And there's a bunch of aftermarket guys ranging from advertiser Ilium to whatever that'll give you forward-facing pegs that you can mount underneath the jugs or whatever.
Right.
But they need to start with that. But this also has the effect of pushing you back. Now, back in the old days, what we did with you is we sat you on your H3, on your Kawasaki or whatever, sat you down. We made you said, "Are you comfortable sitting there?" "Oh, yeah." "Stick out your hands." Boom. And where they naturally set, we put the bars. We could put them there because bars were bars.
Yeah.
You could buy them in every configuration known to man, with setbacks, with 45 degrees for the hands, anything you wanted. Bars were available. You bolted, then you had to worry about the cables. But you could set a guy up so he was totally relaxed, as if he were sitting in his easy chair. Can't do that on a BMW. They've got these stupid stubs that mount to a fixed position, and then there's a whole aftermarket of trying to get you raise it up and push it back, barbacks.
Yeah.
Guys need to alter the position they are when they're on the motorcycle so their posture improves, issue number one, which pushes their head back, issue number two. And they need to think about this seriously. So behind me, all the guys look at me, and I always have a bag behind me. They go, "Oh, God, you always look like you're ready to cross country or spend 2 weeks on vacation on your bike." I said, "The thing's empty. It's a backrest." You get my drift?
Yeah.
I can push it forward in various ways to where I'm closer to the bars, which are already on bar backs and risers. Guys need to spend a lot of time on what position is comfortable and not, because if they're slouching forward, if they got a lot of pressure on their hands because they're leaning forward and they got arthritis in their hands, eventually they're going to be irritated to the point where it pushes through whatever medication they've got.
Yeah.
If their helmet is leaning and their head is leaning forward, I guarantee you they're going to have a crink in their neck eventually, and their neck's going to hurt. So changing your riding position and getting very mindful of what you're doing. So I sit here and I'm comfortable as hell. And when I'm sitting on my motorcycle and I reach out my hands, I can touch the bars, and my elbows are in, and I'm leaning back against this bag. You'd think I was watching TV at the house. You mentioned cruise control. I live and die by cruise control.
Yeah.
I put it on cruise and that's it. People don't understand. They can adjust their speed 1 or 2 miles, 1 mile per hour by hitting it once and pushing it back once.
Yep.
That'll give you a 1 mile per hour. A lot of guys ride with one hand because one of their hands is so arthritic they can't work the throttle. That's fine. But they have their right hand in their lap. They're riding with their left hand so they can work the cruise control. They probably are a candidate for grip puppies or something that adds both diameter to the grips and makes them softer. So the very first thing I do is put those on a bike because BMW's grip is too damn small and very hard. So if you soften it up and make it harder and use cruise control, you can probably, the problem becomes when I get in technical roads and for 30 minutes, I'm having to go up and down the gears. I'm having to shift. I'm working the throttle. I'm doing, my hands are killing me, with relatively quickly, but getting your hands straight, getting your posture straight. They're hotter than hell. They're sitting there sweltering. They're sweating. Most of humanity doesn't like to break a sweat. I have to be honest with you. The whole population works inside in an air-conditioned environment. You put them on a bike, and they go, I'm sweating, I'm uncomfortable, I don't like it.
Yeah.
And their butt hurts. So let's take the butt first. There is only one solution that I know of, and I'm not going to advertise this particular seat maker, but there's only one solution which 100% of the time when somebody buys this seat, they're glad they bought the seat.
Yeah.
There's only one seat. And just go find a bunch of guys who are actual iron butt competitors or iron butt folks and ask them where they got that seat because they're not an advertiser, I don't think. So I just not name it. But it looks like a bucket. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And basically what this thing is doing is transferring the downward forces from your coccyx, your lowest, your bottom of your spine, to your hips. So all you're doing is moving all the weight from that one pressure point onto your hips. For people like myself, this does cause a problem. That's where your venous veins going down to your feet are. And in my case, my blood pressure is so low that I cut off circulation when I put all that pressure there. So I had to put a pad in the bottom of the bucket to lift me out of it a little bit. So my feet don't go to sleep. But the other solutions available to you, and here's where a little practical wisdom comes in. People the whole sheepskin industry was all about selling you a sheepskin to put on your seat. Yeah. People forget this. You would go to a rally and they weren't seat makers. There were sheepskin guys. And it had the same effect. It was something like a pad. It was a sort of paddy-like. If you get something which is intended for a wheelchair, remember, wheelchair persons are sitting there all day. Yeah. And if you get something that's made for a wheelchair, and you can get it because the purple mattress people used to make whoever had the patent on that purple foam, which is basically looks sort of like an egg crate, if you've ever actually seen one. They sold it to the people who are making now the purple mattress. There's a purple pillow out there somewhere. But if you hunt and peck and search, you can buy for like $60 a piece of this purple stuff. Cut it to a saddle shape. Go to Airhawk, buy one of their covers, and you will be pleased with the result. Yeah. And because you're basically trying to emulate what somebody in a wheelchair's got, and you've saved yourself, I don't know, $700 to $1,000. So it's worth a try, is my point. The heat issue, the old school solution of that was silk. And you can get silk from a place called like Winter Silks. It's expensive, but you would get this heavyweight silk, which would be normally a liner that a skier would use. And you'd put that on, and you'd have silk pants, you'd have a silk top, and you'd open it up. The stuff never smells. It has a wonderful antibacterial property to it where it never stinks, though you do want to wash it. It draws sweat off you like a son of a bitch. You open up, excuse my profanity, you open up your jacket, the air hits that, and the evaporative cooling effect is off the charts. Yeah. In terms of cooling you down. So you've now got some suggestions, which kind of about removing the irritants, taking you from top to bottom. The posture issue also is a benefit to your shoulders because the higher your hands are, the more stress there's going to be on your shoulders. So when I said to you, get in a position you're comfortable with and then just sort of reach out slowly. I mean, this is a visual because my elbows are still by my side when I'm reaching out. Right. I'm only reaching out to where almost my elbows are above my hips. I'm not reaching out.
Yeah, not in a stretch.
I'm not stretching out. So I think hopefully I've given you a bunch of, useful advice about setting you up and setting the bike up. But there is something to be said about yoga, stretching, because people are not stretched. And there is a stretch, which if people want to send me an email, I will video and send to them. But there's one simple, take your damn helmet off when you get to a gas stop. Just take it off.
Yeah.
Don't leave it on. Take it off. Take your head, stand up straight, roll your shoulders back. Just push them straight back and put your finger on your chin and push your head back. But you need to do some stretching prior. You need to get more flexible before you get on the bike, because that will, and it wouldn't help. It wouldn't hurt to, if you're totally deconditioned, to get conditioned a little bit, because the muscles support the joints and take stress, forceful stress.
Yeah.
Let's talk what they're probably doing, which is meds. I got a bleeding ulcer out of following the directions on the Excedrin bottle. The only thing that worked for my neck pain, every time I get on it, all winter I'm off the bike. The summer comes, I'm going down to bike week. The spring comes, I'm going down to bike week. I leave Indy, it's 19 degrees. Never gets warm till you're south of Atlanta, where now all of a sudden it's 32 degrees. You arrive in Jacksonville and it's 56 degrees, and these guys are bundled up like it's an Antarctica, and you're peeling off layers of electric gear. But my neck always hurts. For some reason, the first ride of the year, my neck is killing me. And the only thing that worked was Excedrin. Now, you can't buy Excedrin in Canada. It's illegal. Now, you can buy Excedrin without aspirin in Canada. So I walked myself into a Canadian pharmacy and I said, do you have baby aspirin here? Well, yeah. I said, you have Excedrin here? Yeah. The pharmacist just shook his head and looked at me because he knows what I was doing.
Yeah.
Just making U.S. Excedrin, which is acetaminophen, aspirin, and caffeine. If you were to pick up 2 bottles of Excedrin migraine and Excedrin extra strength, you're going to see that the caplets, each one, have exactly the same amount of this, exactly the same stuff. But I guarantee you're going to see 2 different dose rates on these 2 things. So I'm sitting with a bunch of Raider Sport touring guys on our annual Ozarks run at a fishing place where we're getting trout for lunch. And a lady in a wheelchair sitting there, and we're complaining about old age and aches and pains. And I say, yeah, I think I'll take an Excedrin. She says, well, you're not taking more than 2, are you? So yeah, I am.
Sure, all the time.
It says I can take at least 4. She says, no, it doesn't. So yeah, it does. No, it doesn't, sir. Well, Martha, I'm going to show you. Boom. Literally, if you went to a pharmacist, they're going to tell you the product's dangerous and there's good reason it's not sold in Canada. The aspirin in particular, but NSAIDs in general, compromise your stomach lining.
Yeah.
I was still taking my prescription anti-inflammatory. I'm now taking this over-the-counter stuff on what I perceive to be on label. I'm doing it for 2 days, riding down and riding back. And according to my doctor, I probably lost 20% of my blood supply.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So, so the stuff is dangerous, especially if you're already taking a meloxicam, Mobic, or some other prescription anti-inflammatory, which a lot of people are. So there's a danger to taking over-the-counter stuff. So if you are taking it and you're taking it safely, be careful with it and don't overdose on it. A lot of the guys are the typical tactic, which you see advertised like Hades, is a topical ointment of some kind. This will help you with your pain.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on is 99 times out of 100, it's called a counter irritant. What it's doing is it's irritating you. The old Tiger Balm, for example, was the classic. Back in the day, everybody had a little thing of Tiger Balm, stunk like hell because it's camphor. And it's basically an irritant. Its intention is literally to be irritating, and it fires up the nerves, and it both is something you end up paying attention to, so you're not so much paying attention to the pain. And it desensitizes the neuron because it's exciting them. It desensitizes the nerve, certain nerves to which it's exciting to cause pain. So it's a way, counter irritants are a way of masking pain by both making you less aware of your pain, because this stuff is irritating. Menthol is the most common of these that are used in over-the-counter stuff. So you always talk about BioFreeze or these stuff that is heavily about menthol, because menthol is a counter irritant.
Right.
It's basically desensitizing, the neurons. You'll see talk of stuff that is billed as a nutritional anti-inflammatory, because there is some evidence that shows if you take certain vitamin or nutritional compounds, they do have an impact on inflammation.
Yeah.
If you start reading double-blind studies about that stuff, you'll get confused about how much of this is placebo effect and how much of this is actually this stuff doing something.
Right.
But the dose rate you have to take of these products is not likely to be the dose rate you're going to end up with whatever you bought. So if the most widely sold of these is a product called Zyflamend. But I probably, to my wife's dismay, do take 50 pills a day.
Ooh.
Easily, because I'm taking them 3 times a day. So I've got a dose rate that I'm monitoring, and I'm making sure I've got something in my system throughout the day.
Right.
So, and I don't take it unless there was a double-blind study that said this has some effect at this dose rate. The dilemma is you normally don't even get an effect. Typically, these are 12-week minimal studies. At the end of 12 weeks, people have more range of motion. That doesn't mean they were pain-free. They'll on a Womack or other pain scale, they'll give themselves a lower rating. They don't say they're pain-free. They just say they have less pain, and they have, especially through a wider range of motion.
Yeah.
So it's worth considering, but they're better off doing a stretching routine, and doing a strength training routine, and starting out slowly and, being gentle. But this might be something which is worth talking about down the road, because I actually have some thoughts on that subject, which would be a good way for them to start. But anyway, that's my rant on pain management. Got any questions?
Well, I just I can't believe that your nerve that you would expect somebody to do something active instead of just taking a pill. I mean, what country are you living in?
Well, the worst thing you can do, if you went to the Arthritis Association website, they're going to tell you can't afford to lose range of motion. And what starts to happen is people will become more and more. They don't take a good stride. All of a sudden, they're shuffling. Why are you shuffling? Well, it hurts. Okay. Now, have you shortened up all the muscles and the tendons, which will enable you to take a firmer step because you're in pain? I mean, you don't have bone-on-bone joint problems, do you? No. So the joint will move through a full range of motion. Let's make it do it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. People will start changing, even though the joint's not compromised, but they've got inflammation of some kind. They'll start changing how they move instead of trying to make sure they move as long as they're not damaging anything. They want to get the fullest range of motion they can, and that requires a stretching routine of some kind.
Yeah. I remember after my crash, I had my lower left leg was really mangled, and I remember going through my physical therapy, and the key metric that they measured every time I went was the range of motion in my knee and ankle. Right. That was the graph that the physical therapist showed me every time to prove that I was making progress, prove to myself, because, anybody who's done physical therapy after a trauma knows it is incredibly difficult and incredibly painful. And it's very hard to force yourself to do something that hurts, even if it's benefiting you. And that's where my current problems came from, that crash that was now however long ago 1999 was. So, pushing 25 years. Because as a result of the crash and various other things, I have one leg that's a little bit shorter than the other. And so that threw off my gait, which has now translated into hip and knee problems 25 years later.
it wouldn't hurt you to have a gait analysis done in a running shop.
Yeah.
And think about an orthotic and insert into one of your shoes. I mean, has an orthopedic guy actually told you one leg shorter than the other?
Yeah. It started out almost an inch shorter, and they had to stretch it out with some hardware. After it was a whole thing, with multiple surgeries, and it was a year before I could even really walk by myself without a cane. It was pretty brutal. So I've made a tremendous amount of progress, but over the course of the years, just those tiny offs, those tiny differences, over, however many millions of steps one takes in a year, they start to do damage. I feel like one of the smartest things I've done in the last 10 years, especially, was to start to visit a chiropractor and to, have some attention paid to my hips and my legs, and to get a little bit of exercise, even just a little bit, to like you were saying, with that range of motion, to keep that stride effective.
Right. So do you have, and you can cut this out of your video or keep it in, I don't know, but I'm going to ask you some questions as a trainer, because if you had presented yourself to me as a trainer, first thing I do is I have you do what's called a squat assessment, because I want to see if you can, when you do squat, and I make you have your arms over your head, because what I'm looking for, I make you keep your arms straight overhead, and I watch you squat. And all I'm trying to do is figure out, does he have tight calves? Because if you do, you will tend to fall. I'm looking to see if you're falling forward, if your arms can stay overhead, or whether they fall forward, because I'm assessing where you're tight and where you need to be stretched. A guy like I can tell you right now, because I'm looking at you, sitting there before me, your shoulders are rolling forward, and you have a hard time standing up straight in perfect posture. Is that correct?
Well, I'm also leaning over my microphone, which is
okay. So this is not your normal position. Okay.
No. Usually, I have my back against the back of the chair, and I have good upright typing.
But but you'd be hard to train.
Yeah,
because I couldn't load you correctly, because one leg, you're going to be your hip is not going to be level.
Yeah,
one leg is literally shorter than the other. Your hip is not level. This means you would have a tendency to lower back pain. Or not.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I started visiting a chiropractor.
You do have lower back pain.
Yeah, from time to time.
It's called your gluteus medius. It sits on top of your big ass muscle, and it swings your leg about 12 degrees.
Yeah.
Because one of them brings you up and down. The other one moves it laterally and moves it side to side. And you are tearing it to shreds if it's tilting. You've also got compression of one of those vertebrae on one side and opening on the other.
Yeah.
So getting, leveling your hips out, either getting a shoe made by an orthopedic people who specialize in that. But I'd be dealing, if it's permanently shorter, you need to do that. You need literally to get your hips leveled up, or else you're going to have spine problems, and you don't want to have that.
No.
You don't want to have disc problems. Catch my drift. Got any other things I can help you with today?
I'm actually kind of curious about. So typically so what you were talking about with the handlebars, that's one of the reasons why I've stuck with a GS as my touring bike, because it has, easily adjustable handlebars, and I keep the tools to adjust my handlebars and hand controls with me, usually in a tank bag or even in my pocket, because it's just a couple of Allen wrenches, and I'll make adjustments as I go. A few days into a trip, a week into a trip, I'll adjust the handlebars, just to kind of tweak everything. It's so easy to do with those. And I have just 1 inch risers that are straight up. They don't tilt back. They're just 1 inch straight up. And that seems to do the trick for me. But, I am very lucky in that I have the opportunity to ride, a lot of different bikes. BMW will sometimes loan me a motorcycle to check out a new model or something like that. And my favorite ones are always the ones with adjustable handlebars. And I think not knowing what you were going to talk about, that really makes a lot of sense about the adjustability of the handlebars.
Yeah. What amazes me is why there's not an aftermarket in bars.
Yeah.
Like there was back in the day. In other words, why aren't BMW guys simply going, screw this? Excuse me, again, you'll have to edit this. I don't like the way this don't fit. There are still bar makers out there. That's a 7-inch or 7/8 inch or whatever it is bar. Of course, if it's BMW, it's got some special diameter.
Yeah. And it tapers.
You know what I mean? It's got a special diameter, and it was made only in Romania.
Yeah.
But I'm a little surprised there's just not an aftermarket in bars. And there might be, for all I know, because then you could set it up any damn way you pleased.
Yeah. I know
it's best for you.
There's a pretty robust aftermarket in handlebars for dirt bikes and cruisers and things like that.
Yes. But yeah, there may be an aftermarket for GS guys. I'm not a GS guy, so I don't know. But let's pause here for a minute as I ruminate it. What we didn't go into in this little podcast is there's a whole bunch of other stuff out there about pain management.
Oh, absolutely.
Ranging from mindfulness therapy. I haven't talked about the use of ice packs. Get off the bike and apply. I mean, that's the traditional one. Rest it, ice it, elevate it, compress it. Rice. So the old rice therapy we haven't gone into. So what we didn't, there's a whole bunch of the use of TENS machines. They are portable now. You can literally be TENSing yourself. Your chiropractor, I'm sure, puts TENS on your back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. A little buzz machine.
Yeah.
It's a TENS machine. So you can buy portable TENS stuff that fits in your shirt pocket. This phone's about to go off because it's a landline we use for all trash calls. Want to call me? When you look for me, you find a landline. It never gets answered.
Yeah. But that's not bad.
Only some important call comes through, so you end up listening to it. Anyway,
yeah. It's only 2 calls in an hour. That's not bad for a landline.
That's pretty good. Please leave a message. There you go. Hold on. Boom, we're done. But yeah, TENS, these portable TENS machines. I haven't talked about neck traction. If you go to Amazon and you look up neck traction, you're going to see a device which is like stacked balloons you wrap around your neck. And with a little bulb you could squeeze. It fills this thing with air and it pushes your head up. They're cheaper than dirt.
Yeah.
They're not worth. They're actually worth considering. If indeed you're on your bike and your neck is killing you from your helmet, you at the end of the day, go put this thing around your neck and squeeze it, and it'll traction up your head as if you were to have someone pulling your head.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're $25 at Amazon, but they're worth considering, even though they're a little bit of a pain in the buttissimo to use. But there's things like that. There's things like, TENS machines, which you could use at night. But I don't want to, I'm starting to get into stuff which puts me in the wheelhouse of an orthopedic or physical therapist. Because anytime you talk about traction,
right.
I'm starting to walk out of my wheelhouse that I'm allowed to be in and not get myself in trouble, if you catch my drift. But if a psychologist is talking about pain management, he's literally going to say, you can totally control it with your mind. How do I know this? I'll send you the articles. Well, in other words, they're pretty convinced that stress itself, you internalize it. Think about this. You're stressful. Your blood pressure goes up. If you've got other kinds of conditions, you're in pain. If you could calm down, de-stress.
Yeah.
Right? Don't internalize it. You've got a death grip on the bars. You're mad. You're bringing all that to the table.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So to some extent, they are correct. Certainly your ability to not pay attention to it would be different if you weren't jacked up mentally. Depression, anxiety. So there is something to be said about getting on your motorcycle in a good mood.
Yeah. Not
stressed out and not bringing to the thing all the BS you had hoped to leave behind you, which is why you bought it.
Yeah. Right? Well, it's funny you say that because, one of the ways that I deal with stress is actually to go get on my motorcycle, because I know as soon as
it's called a cleanse run if you're in motorsport touring.
Yeah, and I know that
cleanse run.
Yeah, when I get on there, if I transmit my internal stress to the handlebars, it's going to make my shoulders and neck hurt. So I have to basically force myself to relax. So I have to relax my hands, I have to relax my arms, my shoulders, my neck. That alters my breathing, that alters my posture. Good. And in a couple hours, I feel better. The problem hasn't gone away, but I don't care about it as deeply to cause me the stress. And I feel like, now I can deal with it. That was a major stress reliever for me during the lockdown phase of the pandemic.
Indeed. Yeah. So there's a bunch of stuff about pain management that we never got into. And I tried to make this mainly and only about you're on the bike. It causes its own irritation. How do you manage that? You're on over-the-counter stuff. Beware. Yeah. Right. And I didn't, but there's a whole set of pain management stuff ranging from rice for rest to ice it and so forth, to TENS, which you could do apart from what your chiropractor does, to traction devices for the neck, to mindfulness therapy. There's a bunch of stuff out there which you can't do while you're riding the bike typically.
Yeah.
Right. But this notion of getting off the bike, the rest thing you can do, get off the bike.
Yeah.
Go inside, cool down. Hydration we haven't talked about. And you can stretch while off the bike. And you need to stretch your hamstring. Well, we can't get into that in an audio podcast, but
it's a visual.
If someone contacted me at extendtheride@gmail.com with a question or two, and if I get actual inquiry, I will do a video of this one stretch you could easily do while you're standing there pumping gas.
Cool.
But if anybody goes to extendtheride@gmail.com.
Well, and
way
hopefully
I'll know it's about this podcast, not not the magazine.
And hopefully, at the very least, just hearing this conversation will inspire some folks to reach out to a professional.
Yes.
And do some reading, do some listening, do some watching, talk to a doctor, a chiropractor, an orthopedic, one of these people who can evaluate you in person and give you really expert advice.
Yeah. You need to know if you've got chronic pain, you need to know the cause of it.
Yeah.
Period. End of discussion. And if all of a sudden you have an episode of acute pain, you need to be able to distinguish. You need to know whether that's a heart attack while you're riding the bike, for example.
Yeah.
And there's some things that you if it's all of a sudden very, very different.
Yeah.
So you might want to stop, call an EMT.
Yeah.
But so I think what we've covered is not that kind of situation. But one critical takeaway from this is pain is a signal that there's a problem.
Right.
And if it's a chronic problem that's going to get worse, which most of them, frankly, are. I mean, these arthritises don't go away. They just become managed. Your problem's not going away. It just becomes managed. And the advice I gave you was to try to stop it. I mean, your example is a perfect example. The advice I gave you was an attempt to get you leveled up so that you don't tear up a bunch of muscles, so that you don't have back joint disc problems, right?
Yep.
I'm putting my sports medicine hat on, and I realize I can't load you up until I level you up. Well, I envy you in your podcasting shtick, and I hope you got something out of this you can use, and that you'll delete everything that I told you to delete.
Absolutely. It'll be like it never happened. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already a member of the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Thank you for your membership and your ongoing support. If you're listening and you're not a member, I'd like to encourage you to join. Become a digital member for just $39 a year and support not only 200 Miles Before Breakfast, but our other podcasts as well, Chasing the Horizon, and the MOA's YouTube channel, which features tech and how-to videos, product unboxing, reviews, and other fun videos, including a tasty recipe or two. Membership in the MOA also gets you a ton of discounts and reduced cost access to programs like the Platinum Roadside Assistance Plan. You can find out all about the MOA by pointing your web browser to bmwmoa.org and participate with us, even if you're not a member, by finding us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to 200 Miles Before Breakfast, the podcast by, for, and about the members of the BMW Motorcycle Owners of America. Ride smart out there, and let's meet up for breakfast at your favorite diner real soon.